Okay. That should be me. Hello. That's right. Okay. Why did this... Oh, let's not do that, eh? One dark, vivid. One dark... whoa. What's the point in calling it one dark if you're going to do... kind of like that one. Maybe that one. Yeah, we'll go with that one. Okay. Sorry, I was playing with the themes yesterday in Rider, and yeah. Okay, so I really should kind of track how many days this is taking me, right? It might be a good idea to do that at some point. So let's get this started up. Run everything just to demonstrate. Yeah, man. Yep, there you go. Yep, it's starting running. Yeah, everything's running. Hi, Shai. How are you doing? Good day. Okay. So. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Very sorry to hear that. I hope your day improves. You get some 3 nightmares. That's a bad record. Ooh, yeah, that's not good. I I sleep so little these days that I don't actually dream because I'm not awake long enough. So I haven't had a nightmare in a long time. But that's mainly from not sleeping rather than anything else. Ah, nice. New tools in Rider for the monitoring. That's pretty cool. We can I was monitoring the actual tenant management piece, which is pretty cool. Environment vars, nice. That'll come in handy. Which project didn't start? Tenant management, view consumers. Second nightmare continuing on the first one though, so I guess one long nightmare and a small one. I woke up after 3 hours of sleep from the first nightmare. Oh wow. No, that's never good. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's definitely 8. So what didn't start? Oh. Okay, that's definitely 8. Okay. Well, I hope you get some better rest tonight and stay nightmare free. Have you ever subscribed to their thoughts of like the foods you eat or I get the meaning of the nightmare, but actually following its advice is something else. Ah, so you think it was an underlying, it's like an underlying nervousness or a thing that you've got in your mind. Gotcha. Yeah, the whole science of sleep thing is fascinating. Like why we do things and what our brains do to us in those times. Okay, so we added this yesterday. This is for the other tenant that we created just to demonstrate the tenancy. So our planning item today, I'm pretty sure these ones were because it was quite clear. Okay, so I think the nightmares I've had have always been hard to decode. Okay, so the planning item is introduce projects. We need to be able to define a project. The project should have a name and a prefix. So we're going to do that today, right? So Gertrude Bing, that's what we did. So that ain't good to start with. That's a bad start. Sorry, I just had something on my screen. My first one said get therapy. The second one said be more assertive. Not sure about the second one though. Huh. So why didn't you actually add? Most intriguing. Terminal. No. Debug. Ah. That would be a reason why that failed. Why that didn't go through, because it's actually not connected. Let's close that down. Let's try that again, eh? Oh, good, Shy. I mean, I'm not. I'm more than happy to but I don't like dreams and nightmares and stuff. I don't know how to like again the ones I would have as a kid were never decodable and like I don't know, like there's a lot of science in sleep and a lot of different opinions on how to interpret things, and it's fascinating. Actually, I had a book when I was a kid that was like full of dream analysis stuff, and I don't know how much I subscribe to it. Oh, what is this doing? So the problem here is this is starting though, because this can't be. So if I start that up, right, it's going to build. But what is that? It's as if the tooling has changed. Right. So those aren't errors, they're warnings, right? So the actual app builds and runs, but now it's running on 49266 and not 40. So what's running this? Right? what is running the client app? Well, this isn't running the client app. I know that much. So let's try that again. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to do my posts in the Discords. I probably should stop posting in Cetos because it's like he's a game dev stream and most of his viewers are game dev, so there's no real interest from here. Okay, I get that you're from originally we met in Cetos stream, but it's I think the few that come in there. It's easy for me to see because I can easily realize, true, I am afraid of this thing happening in the way. I had clear nightmares since 2 years. Wow. But I mean, you stress a lot, don't you? You have a lot of like, coding is coding for me. Nice. Yeah, that's why I watch game dev streams because it's still coding. It's just a different style. Kafka plugin. I don't need Kafka plugin right this second. I need this to work. Yeah, I have a stressy. Yeah. See, when I was back 20 something years ago, I was dating my now wife, but I was in the UK and she was here, and I stressed a lot over that. Like, you know, when you have a long distance relationship in your early 20s, there's a lot of stress to go on. Like, what does it look like, right? So I would get extremely stressed, and what it actually resulted in for me was fainting. So I get so stressed and wound up that I'd actually just pass out. And I could do it at any point, including walking. So one day I was walking to work on a busy road and collapsed on the pavement, luckily not into the road. So at that point I was like, I'm going to go see a doctor now. And you know what his advice was? Don't stress. Because you don't need to be put on meds. You don't need to take drugs for this. Just don't stress. And yeah, and I actually do a pretty good job. I have moments of stress, like moments of tension and frustration, but I have a general habit of, okay, I can't do anything about it, move on. Let's do it when I can deal with it, right? So I kind of trained myself to do that. So it's very hard for me to comprehend stress at this point of like I feel I don't empathize as much as I should do with stress, because I kind of don't have that mentality of, I can get rid of this now. That's what I'm looking for. So, okay. So the app is running. Did that actually start properly is the question. No, it didn't start properly. Why will he not start? Port 4200 is already in use. It can't be in use though. So Kafka is not a language. Kafka is a tool that I'm using here. So Kafka is my way of transferring information between the components. So when you're building a normal web application, right? You're building a client and you're building an API, or you know, if you're using different technologies, but you're generally building an API, you're building a client, and you kind of that API is communicating with the database, kind of like a database, yeah. This system is broken up into many components, right? So I'm distributing the system across many pieces. primarily to try and make sure that I'm not overloading any one component with responsibility, right? So it's very easy as you start to develop a larger and larger system to just kind of dump code in there. And after a while, that becomes unmaintainable. So I've broken up my system into several components, right? So I have planning items, tenant management, tickets, and the view. So the actual database that I can join everything together in, and I'm able to see that, right? So Kafka is my method of communicating between those systems, right? So the individual systems themselves, I don't want to have talking to each other, because talking to each other means that they are now inextricably linked. There's all sorts of problems that come with that. So I break up the system into these components, and this is an individual API. So each one of these is an API, and they have their own databases, right? So they're actually separated. What I use Kafka for is when I change something in here, I use Kafka to send a message, and it stores that message in, let me bring it up, localhost 5001. Is it? No, localhost 8080. So this is the console for seeing Kafka things. So Kafka has this concept of topics. So you have like a table essentially, right? And you post data into that table. Now, it's built for massive amounts of messages. It's built for speed. So it is a nice little tool, but it allows me to keep that separation between my components. So when I add a planning item, I add it into, and you probably have seen this if you've been around here before. So I added a planning item into my planning database, and then I publish that planning item out to Kafka, right? So this is my Kafka layer. So I produce basically an event that says, okay, this planning item is updated, right? And then I have what's called a consumer sitting listening to that on my view component that says, okay, I got a new planning item. Okay, I'll store that now, and it kind of holds its own copy of that data. Right. It saves my client like communicating in one database. It allows these to be speedy and focused solely on storing the data, and they can get out of the way, and the view can kind of join all these things together itself and make them nice and easy to access and read. And for a smaller system, this is very complicated, right? But if you're building a larger scale system, you do really want to consider, okay, well, should I be able to manage this thing on its own, right? And that's kind of my question is, should this thing sit with anything else, right? So if it doesn't, then I kind of break it off into a component. And the benefit of doing this view method is all these databases are write databases, so you don't really read anything from them other than by the ID. So you can highly optimize these for their storage mechanisms. And here, for speed of storage rather. And on the read side, I can kind of make views, and I can kind of join database tables, and I can make the table structure look more like I want to query it, because again, I can optimize it for the query. Another benefit of using Kafka, and we'll see that in the coming weeks with this project, is I can now add extra pieces into the system without affecting the rest of the system. So let's say, and this is going to be a thing, right? I want to introduce search. Well, if I have this database for the query, and it's built for like storing the objects in a way that I can query them out quickly, that's great, but that doesn't really make for good searching. If I modify them to be primed for searching, then I risk slowing them down for the querying, right? Because I might add text indexes, I might add a load of weight to that database where I don't want it to be weighty. I want it to be nice and quick and easy to read and easy to pull out, right? So in that respect, I basically want to have a different database for my search. So what I have the benefit of doing here is I can now come over and say, okay, well now I want to have a search system, right? And this is going to be Elasticsearch, right? And I can now also consume into Elasticsearch. So now I can build a different API, right, for search, which then I have access to GraphQL as well. So I can now build this in such a way that my search system is able to do that. Yeah, but so Elasticsearch is optimized for that search scenario, right? But I can build that, and then from a client perspective, I just query APIs. I don't actually know where they're actually located, so I can disconnect my client. And if I rearrange these pieces, if I change them around or I break them up into new pieces, my client doesn't actually have to care as long as the same APIs exist, right? So I can move the back end around with the client being sat there blissfully unaware, right? So if I decide that ticketing is getting too big and has more responsibilities, I can break them up. Oh yeah, there's extra databases. Yeah, there is actually for the database. So for the system so far, there's 4 databases, right? And then Kafka behaves somewhat like a database, and some people actually do use it kind of like a database. But it really is a message store, and it will persist for as long as you tell it to. The default is like 2 weeks, so a message will sit there for 2 weeks. A benefit of that is if a system is down, if a piece of the system is down, right? So let's say my search system is not accessible, right? Because I've brought it down to fix it or maintain it, right? And a load of messages come in here, right? So my read system's getting them; they're fine in this database, but my search is out of date. Okay, I might not be able to search, but my system's not broken, right? The entire system isn't down because my search database is not available. This is just returning, nope, I can't find anything, right? So what I can do is then, when this comes back up, because I've got that cache of messages in Kafka, this will then say, oh, I'm a bit behind here, let me catch up. And it will go and consume those messages and then store the data. So when this system comes back online, it will be updated. I won't have lost anything. So there's a benefit of having this design. Never tried using more than one database. Not sure how that would work. Does that only work with Kafka? No, I mean, having one database, you can set up as many databases as you want. You can set up many contexts with Entity Framework. Staying in my .NET world, right? But generally, you don't have a limit on how many databases you can use. These are all on one server right now. They could potentially be on separate servers as well, right? So there's no challenges with that. The benefits are you can kind of separate the data. You can optimize the data. You could use a different technology. So one of the key things here is I don't have to use SQL Server, right? I can use the technology that works for the piece that I need, and that's kind of why Elasticsearch here, right? It works from the perspective of, well, I can pick and choose which data stores I use because I now have some like independent deployability. I have these slices of my application broken out. So in the world, like if you were developing a Python API, this API gateway, what it does is it says, okay, well, let me bring that up. Localhost. There's a lot of things in play to do this, by the way. So it's not something it's not for the faint of heart. But basically, when those APIs start up, they have they register themselves with this piece here, right? So they basically say, oh, by the way, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. So I can see the status of my APIs. And in here, I also store a configuration for routing those messages, right? So what I'm saying is, okay, when you see a method call for API planning items, you're actually going to go to the planning items service and you're going to post to planning items, right? So I'm defining these kind of routing rules in here, and I'm able to use just a name here. I don't have to resolve IP addresses. I don't have to resolve ports or anything. It just kind of works. So if you were using something like Python, etc., you might create an API gateway and then set up many Python APIs. So if you were breaking up your application into, like, let's say you were creating a sales site, right? You might want marketing and sales as separate pieces because they have separate needs, there's separate requirements, right? Marketing might have a lot of customer information with addresses. Sales might not have, or sales might have more financial information. Marketing doesn't need the financial information. So you kind of separate them there. And then the APIs, using a gateway, you can kind of make it very transparent to the client that it's actually calling different systems. The client just knows I'm going to this address, right? So from the client perspective, it's only ever calling, oh, I'm going to API planning items. Oh, I'm going to API register. I'm going to get the requirements, etc. Right? It's never going there. And this only deals with the post side because this is all for the write API. Right now, I think I have to change this piece out, sadly, because I think this gateway that I'm using doesn't support GraphQL. So ultimately my GraphQL endpoint will come through here. So my client will just say, go to this one address with this, with these requests, and it will figure out the system it's going to. So yeah, you don't need to have, Kafka to use more than one database. Now the challenge comes when you need to communicate between the systems. So there's a concept called the source of truth, right? Only one of these systems can be the source of truth of certain data, right? So a planning item is owned by the planning component, right? Any other system that receives it does not have any rights to edit it, right? Because the planning item, the planning system, the planning component owns that piece, right? So you then have to, so the reason why it works with Kafka, and there's other technologies, and there's actually some more technologies in play here, but the problem you have then is, how do you communicate that information from this system to this system, right? Or more precisely, let's say tenant management, users. Planning needs to know about users from the perspective of, it needs to make sure it associates with a valid user, right? So it only offers the ability to so when a user is created, I actually produce a Kafka message, and in that instance, planning actually consumes. Actually, planning doesn't consume that because I don't care about it. Huh, interesting. Because I'm using the view. But you'll see I have these consumer libraries, and basically they are, anytime you see consumers, that is Kafka. I'm using that to consume the data. And all I do here is say, okay, well, here's my event. Now handle that event. Right? So yeah. There's a lot of moving parts in this system. From a development perspective, it is a complicated system. But it does give me a lot of flexibility in going forward, and rather than try and build an application that sits neat, so a more traditional application, no worries, might just look like, API application DB, right? And then you have a client site in front of that, right? But the reason I'm not developing it that way, even because it is a personal project, and it is a project I want to take further, but this not only serves as, this is the system I want to build, and it's the system I want to aim for, because it is, if I achieve the things I'm aiming for, the benefits of having this system the way it is, the the more flexible the system is, the easier I can make this going forward, right? I can change this, I can flex this, I'm set up for that growth, right? Whereas with this system, if you try and build this, all the things I'm building here into this one stack, what's going to happen is at a certain point, this is going to get very heavy and unmaintainable and challenging to kind of build out. So I'm kind of building the application I want to build right now rather than the application I could build, which would go a lot quicker. We can work on it sometime. I just think I just need to practice. Yeah, this is something that, don't forget, I've done this for 25 years, so I've got a bit of practice of building systems. This isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and someone who's done a lot more of this sort of stuff might look at this and go, oh, well, you're making a mistake here and you're making a mistake there. But that's growth, that's learning, that's why I stream this stuff, is because if someone does have more experience and can share, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to change things. So, but yeah, that's there's lots of moving parts, there's lots of different technologies, but it does give me the system I want to build. So, first order of business is figure out why I can't get this to run on port 4200. Let's close that down once more. Let's see. I love learning with people. It helps me grow a lot faster. Yeah. It's the one thing I miss. Not working in a team. Like, it's kind of like Water Drink Water is a project to help share that desire to like learn and grow and allow people to tinker with it. But yeah, it would be I miss working in teams because again, I feel the same way. I feel you do learn a lot more when you are working with others. What? Requires elevation? Are you kidding me? What? I can't. How do I open? Open terminal elevated? No. Can't right click. Okay. I guess it's also because you get other people's opinions and it makes you think, I mean, is it fun for me? Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I did learn well, one of the things I made sure to kind of accept is that you're never right 100% of the time. There's always room to learn. There's always room to grow. And you should listen to other people's thoughts and opinions fully and try and give them the ability to explain themselves and see their point of view before you actually rule out. It's funny, talking about Kafka, when I was first trying to pick up using Kafka, yeah, there is, my colleague and I, he's also my friend, we kind of looked at it and I kind of demonstrated what I knew, and he went off and did some reading, and then we got back together and talked about how we might use it. And so Kafka was built for distributing data. It wasn't built for being a message bus per se, right? It's not built for saying, hey, you do this, you do that. Hey, by the way, this happened, right? It's more about, hey, here's some data, and that's what is an event from what I can determine. The biggest problem with Kafka is there's a lot of examples out there, but they all stray away from actually specifying what is an event, but we call them events, right? So when I first started looking, I wanted to build it more of a message bus. I wanted to be able to say, hey, do this, do this, do this. and we got into this large disagreement, turned into an actual argument in work, which was our boss was like, "Do I need to separate you two?" Yeah, it turned into an argument because we were debating over the use, and it was just because we both cared about getting it right. But that conversation, that argument, really shaped the way I use Kafka today. And maybe I'm still wrong. Maybe I'm using Kafka in a way that doesn't make sense, but it feels right. And that's kind of one of the things I've picked up on recently is if something feels right and smooth, then generally using it in the way it's intended. If something starts to feel a little bit off and a bit more difficult, you might not be using it in the right way. So yeah, it's interesting, as is this. Yes, I want to run it as admin. And you create a separate window, thanks. Netstat. Can't do that. Where are you? About that? No worries, Shay. I just want to find out what's actually holding on to that port. And I always forget how to do this. Does that work? Netstat. Nice. Oh. Pipe to find. Oh, there you go. Select string 4200. Sorry. Mr. Jones, good afternoon. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Is that the process ID? I don't think that's the process ID. Oh no, it is the process ID. Let's end that. Bye node. Yeah, okay. I say as I start coughing and spluttering. Yeah. My daughter goes for her black belt test this weekend. And we're all coughing and spluttering. Like me and my wife are now doing it. And today she said, if you two get me sick, I'm going to slap you. It's like, oh, thank you. That's quite the martial artist we're raising there. Because if she misses this cycle, she has to wait another 6 months. And she's kind of got herself ready for this. Oh yeah, my voice is still all up and down. Yeah. Again, I've been struggling through this for the last month. I'm just happy that I can actually stream, and the coughing is more now dry throat after a while, which is Yeah. So by the way, all this the last 40 minutes has been spent with me trying to get this up and running so I can at least run the app and verify that everything's working before I start to make changes. So this is challenging. My dry cough. Okay, so that was Node. Node had got stuck in process when probably when I was updating the IDEs yesterday. Okay, so let's open this finally. Get into the application. It was running against the code. It's not like it was totally failing. It's just not perfect. Okay, so let's see if the planning item goes through this time. So we're gonna add projects. So um, 04, 11, 2024, and I think we'll go through Bing. We create that, and that's failing with a 403. Interesting. So let's go and it's not wrong. It's very right that as a user as so even the login was custom made. So this is auth0. So I'm using auth0 because I don't like the idea of owning passwords, etc. So auth0 is a service that I sign up to. They offer a free tier. And I can basically use this to log in. So when I register my user in my system, I use their API and I store the user in their side with the password. So I never own the password, right? And then, yeah. So my page here, I sign in, it pops up that dialog. I can customize this when I pay for it, but I can't afford to pay for that right this second. There's no earthly way this system is yeah. I'd be begging for subscriptions to try and host this system in the cloud right now. So yeah, this is that one. Actually, I want to. So the problem there is the permissions, right? So as a user, you weren't allowed to use it during our project. So, like with Water Drink Water, we kind of built our own authentication, our own login system there. And the only reason we did it that way in that project is because I don't want to pull in extra dependencies. So if anyone's checking out the project, it's self-contained, right? If I were building a system today, it would take some serious convincing for me to not want to use a system like auth0 or, I mean, Okta is their parent company now, but Okta or auth0 or a similar service. You do have some risks, obviously, because you are handing out your user information to a third party. If they're compromised, you're compromised. But I just think they're experts at authentication. And I'd rather trust them than try and roll my own auth system, or even if I was using identity server or something like that. As a single developer, it's just a lot more work than I really want to go through, and I'm going to leave more holes in my system doing it that way than I need to. So, yeah. I do not have the resources to spare, mentally or physically. As a user, when I am... oh, but it was fun to set up Keyclog. Uh-huh. The only authentication we learned to use is the integrated authentication when we start up a new project in VS. Were you at least told there are other options? Like, were you at least shown why you might use them over the integrated auth? My hope is that the answer is yes, but I don't necessarily trust schools. Hello, Canny, by the way. Did I say hello then? I do apologize. Okay, user permissions. When a user is registered. So the problem with that user, by the way, is that they are allowed to log in, but I set no permissions on them, right? So they have absolutely zero permissions in the system. Oh, that's good job, educators. They are configured with zero permissions. Need to configure with roles. So my thought there is what I might do is kind of configure roles within the system that have sets of permissions, but not use roles within Auth0. So kind of middle ground that one. But that needs to be tracked, because what's happening is when I log in, I don't get when I sign up, I don't get any permissions on my user. I have to actually manually go and set them. So that's creating a problem there. So yeah, and you'd think I'd remember that word. So now I'm logging in using the user that is valid. I should be doing. Oh, there you go. Maybe we can practice with authentication this time and work on the project we started, the food project. You want to teach me, of course. Yeah, we can certainly try. Yeah, absolutely. I'm down for that. Auth0 is pretty easy to get started with. Okay. So what I need to do, so the app's running, the app's building. What I wanted to do is make sure that's up and running, because I'm about to branch and do all sorts of other stuff. 50 minutes into the stream. Although we've had some good conversation, we've had some good we have gone over things, so yeah, it's been productive so far, actually. I consider this productive. Also, reviewing this, by the way, does allow me to at least yeah, no worries. You know, going over this, trying to discuss it, making sure that I'm thinking through what I'm doing does allow me to constantly review my decisions. So projects. So a project, the idea of a project is that you'll be able to kind of group like work. Yeah, rubber ducky. Absolutely. That's a real thing. There's a... I think people underestimate the ability of being able to talk to other people. So a project is a kind of a grouping of items, right? I was thinking about this a lot last night, because I kind of... Sorry, my notebook. I was kind of going through, okay, well, projects, planning items, teams, initiatives. What are my differentiators? What are the what is a project? I use that all day on work call. Random colleagues describe them the problem and say thank you for listening and hang up. That'd be hilarious. Just phone someone. Hey, can I just talk to you for a second? Okay, bye. Uh, so a project is kind of a grouping of like work, right? So when an item is created, it will have, I need some way of identifying it ultimately, right? And a project is the best way of representing that. So a project might be, um, integration, or it might be finance, or it might be, um, you know, new product sort of things, right? And it's a designation that items created for that project will have the identifier of that project, right? Projects span everything, right? I really should, being that I keep using this as a reference, I really should do something here. Um, um, no. Um, you got that. I don't like this. I want to build a different arrow. Well, realistically, I should do that, or something like it. Um, kind of that. This is why I don't do diagramming much, because my attention span gets lost by making lines line up and drawing things. Rubber Ducky works with almost every problem, I feel. Even when students ask teachers, the students already realize the answer. Very funny sometimes. Yeah, I mean, that's the greatest self-discovery is a very useful learning technique, I think, because it means that you actually gain confidence at the same time as understanding. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to duplicate this. Right. I kind of need to present these as these are not real yet. These are kind of, future. That's that. That's that. Okay. Save to file. Next steps. Agile Platform. So right now it's called stories, right? But a project kind of spans all of these things, right? It's bigger than ticketing or planning, etc. So stories. So if a planning item is created for a project, that planning item then spawns new stories. Yes, there'll be new identifiers, but they'll all be from the same project. So PRJ001 might be a planning item, PRJ002 and 003 may be stories, right? But the idea is that there's continuity there. Ticketing won't need to have identifiers like that, but ticketing will be assigned to a project, right? So you can see all tickets for a given project, right? Because at the ticketing level, projects are more of a categorization than they are an actual driving piece. Whereas at planning and stories, we need something to say there's a unique identifier, and that's how you refer to it. And the prefix will give away the actual project. This isn't a new concept, right? This is existing in other things. But yeah, that's kind of the goal right now, is so that the project is there. So then who owns the project is the next question, right? Tenant management, I'm running the risk of being a dumping ground, right? Now, there is something to be said for, okay, well, do I make this too difficult by breaking this out? And the reason I'm discussing this, by the way, is because I've got an item, right? I need to define a project, an API. A project should have a name and a prefix. The prefix should be unique, i.e., no two projects should have the same prefix, right? Because that would be confusing. But this might seem simple, right? I'll just create an API, store it in a database. But when you develop a system like this, that's actually a harder choice. Because the where is the first question, right? Who owns the project? Well, planning can't own the project because planning needs the project. And stories can't own the project because stories needs the project. Ticketing can't own it because ticketing needs the concept of the project but doesn't need the actual prefix stuff. It just needs it as a kind of a grouping. So, what to do? Tenant management seems like the owner of everything right now. But that doesn't mean that it's a great place to put it, right? So the application for tenant management, we have the ability to create tenants, we have the ability to add register new users, etc. So one concept, one idea would be to create tenant what would it be? Tenant administration as a component, and then all features like setting up projects, setting up, but then users. I'm literally using this as a rubber duck right now. I'm literally just trying to talk it through. My apologies for the ads if you are stuck behind them. I need to spend some time on bot stuff and yeah. So uh Mr. Anhorn, 55 months. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Hope you are well. Wow. Okay. Sorry, I'm just reflecting on like 55 months. Like it's just a crazy amount of time of streaming. Yeah. Um. Won't stay long though. I'm going to play some more games soon. Nice, Shy. Thank you. I appreciate the look. Thank you for the conversation. Really appreciated the discussion as well. Hope you've gained something from this as well. Doing great. Got a promotion to senior staff engineer and getting details on my raise today. Congratulations. Well deserved. Like I don't know you personally, but just the way I know your work ethic, etc. I know that is well deserved. Oh, that's pretty impressive. Oh, nice. That's some good news for the day. I'm so good that I'm the single point of failure at my company. Yeah, you probably want to work on that part. Yep. I'm so good that I'm unsackable, unfireable. Okay. So ownership. So um that's the key, Shy. The key is not just take, because I have the trouble. I can't remember. I watch YouTube videos. I re-signed up to a Pluralsight, and I yeah, those videos are not easy to watch sometimes. Um, the information doesn't all settle in. Sometimes you just got to do things, right? Go off and write the same code you wrote last week, right? Do it a different way, do it a different language, even if you want to. But just keep practicing. That's how you get better at something, right? Um, Sharing a tale, our one of our instructors at karate the other day was saying that he was never the greatest of martial artists, um, but he prided himself in his ability to try, and he never gave up. And he's been doing it for 25 years. And, now you wouldn't say he's not a great martial artist. Like, he's an amazing martial artist. And, but he said it's perseverance and hard work, and just keep practicing and repeating. It's not, we do all the basics all the time at karate. We just keep doing them. And it's a repetition. So. That's just a contractor's mindset, isn't it? To become unsackable, over-engineer everything so no one knows what's going on, so you get renewed. I wish it was only a contractor's mindset, but I've seen way too many people who've kind of held that attitude as employees. I've been following this web dev React focused dev who does very good side project walkthroughs. I like following along and redo his tutorials in Blazor. Oh, nice. Nice. Thank you for the look, Shy. Appreciate it. Yeah. I wish it was only a contractor mindset. Although, no, I don't wish it was a contractor mindset at all. Okay. Who owns this? What am I doing? So, users, like, this is management of the tenant. Setting up the projects is not unbelievable that things like adding users, configuring projects, configuring teams, configuring all those things happen in tenant management, right? This is not my tenant. That's the problem. This might be tenant administration. So I do have one other piece that I do need to kind of consider at some point, which is my visualization of tenants and what access I provide as a dashboard for myself, right? Because at some point I'm going to have to develop the tools to say, okay, well, this tenant is has 15 members, this tenant has 12 members, here's where they're billing, right? There's a whole back end system that needs to be worked upon for this to actually be usable as an actual system. Because right now it's all just kind of like, oh, well, yeah, look, it gets to work. And I'm focusing on this part because I don't want to focus on that financial aspect, that kind of tracking aspect, until much later when I'm confident that the pieces are in place. So I think I just taught myself through tenant management right now. And again, because of the way the system is designed, if I change my mind later, there's actually no harm in breaking out a new component. I don't have to overthink this problem because I can isolate this out as a separate project, a separate component later on as part of the larger system. So tenant management is going to be where I'm going to live for projects. So tenant management is going to own projects. I need to learn some new diagramming techniques at some point to demonstrate this, because like the data flow is going to be kind of part of the visualization eventually to explain, because right now it looks like it's all like waterfall. Oh, look, it cascades down and lands in the read database, right? Sorry. So projects are going to live there. I was going back here. So what should a project have? Does the project need anything else? Create project. So we're getting into a new world. I just want to make sure I review these components before I go too deep on actually implementing the feature. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? So I did this to the authorization, just trying to clean up defining the policies, etc. Right. So support user, create tickets, list tickets, read tickets. Right. So I've got this problem now where my permissions. Well, these permissions are horrible, right? Because these live in a shared thing. So I'd have to put every single permission in the system in here, all the policies. Tenant user is you have to have the tenant ID, right? So all users become so technically this one's useless, right? Tenant users, that's basically no permissions whatsoever other than you have a tenant ID attached to you. But I think now is the right time to start thinking about permissions, because so I'm not using roles, right? I'm not defining roles here. I'm setting up a bunch of permissions and then kind of bunching them under a policy on my application. I don't know whether that's the right way. I don't know if anyone else has any opinions on how to do this. There is the option in Auth0. I can define roles. Permissions come easier for certain. Let me just make sure that I don't have any leakage. Please don't require a password or something. ASCII stuff. There we go. Okay. So yeah, I don't know if anyone has any opinions on So I can define roles, right? I can create a term administrator, a system administrator. I have actually got some roles defined. And then you can kind of bundle up the permissions that role contains here. But on the other side, I'm not sure I want to do that, because right now I'm using the policies and they work pretty cleanly. And the reason I might not want to do roles is because I don't think roles come back with my user, right? So if I go to authentication, users, sorry. Let's go to Jane Smythe and then set her a role. Assign roles. She's a tenant administrator, right? So when I get to it, the API will actually set this as the default role or whatever, if this works. So now if I go and I refresh, I believe that's enough, but let's make sure. Sign in, Jane Smythe. think I know our password by now. It drives me nuts. So I'm just getting a token out of the page. I forgot to jot. See, that does not contain the roles. That gives me the permissions that they have, and I can assign the roles. I can use the roles from a permissions assignment in Auth0, but then I need to align the two, and that gets even messier, doesn't it? Because then I would need to have code to define the roles as groupings of policies, right? So what happens here, by the way, is when I define a policy, and that policy has the sets of permissions, and require claim permissions, so I can pass in the info, and that gives me the list of permissions, and I just add them in. So, and it works. It definitely works. I've tested it. But what do I do? There is meant to be a way of sending back roles, or there was. Liquid Sky client. There was a way, I believe, or it was meant to work. OIDC conformant, run types. Is it not on this one? Thinking about it. Cross origin, OpenID Connect. Maybe it's not on this. There was a authentication methods, password, passkey. Oh, you can enable passkey now on this? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so it's not there. It's definitely not on the user. The problem is they've expired rules as well. So the auth pipeline rules, they are expiring. Oh, they extended it to 2020, November 18th. That means that there was still a lot of dependencies there. Hooks are being deprecated. Action flows. Okay, so they're in here now. Add roles and permissions. So maybe this is the custom piece. So library, custom. Oh, so right now, that's funny. Tenant is the only custom claim I add in, and that is because I need to insert the tenant ID into my requests. Can I rename this? Am I going crazy? Can I not rename it? Okay. Let's take that, go back, create an action, go from scratch, apply, add tenant. So these rules and actions are per auth 0 tenant as well. So if I create a new tenant for production, which I would do because it's completely separate user base, etc. I have to make sure these are copyable. Add tenant claim. Recommended. Deploy. So now let's go back there. So the flow now, the login flow, custom, add tenant claim. Apply. Okay, so that will still work. That's okay. Sorry. Again, this is just yet another example of like cascading effects of getting things done. This is for readability. This is not for any other reason than just making it readable. What these are is a static class to allow me to define these, kind of like enums, but they are groupings that I can share. Then user permissions is literally this, and it works. It does work. I could keep doing this, but then the roles, all 0. What are these? These are actions. Inject roles. Enable RBAC. That's on the we don't have those things, right? Let's test. So it looks right. We don't need permissions already injected, so we don't need to inject permission. But yeah, we don't have. What do we have? Event dot authorization dot roles. Okay, so you still say it's there. This is a challenging one. Microsoft roles namespace. What are these? What is this? So we can find it one way or another. I know we want to see it. There you go. You don't need tenant there because tenant's supplied afterwards. Why did that go away? Oh, it just pulls that out. Okay. So event. So still says that's a thing, but I don't think it is. So we can add. I'll make a version of that afterwards if it works. So we apply that now, and then when we log in again, copy value and go back here. Ooh. So we can do roles. Permissions will come along with it. So permissions are more granular from again, it's definitely not an area I feel super confident in terms of how I'm actually going to use these. But I still might want to offer the ability to configure permissions separately to roles. Roles just come with the default set of permissions. So I guess I'm going to learn some things along the way there, but I can define roles. The way that will work. Actually, let's go back there. Library. So permissions are automatically injected because they're configured. Let's do this. Let's go back. Let's create a new action, build from scratch, add roles. Paste that in there, deploy that. Go into the flows, login, move that, custom, add roles, apply that. Library, let's clean this up. I don't want to leave things lying around because there's a... The problem with this sort of stuff is because you don't touch it very often. If you leave it lying around, when you know you don't need it now, you either have to add a comment or do something to indicate that it's not actually being used and you don't need it. You're just leaving it because you're scared of deleting it, right? So I'd rather make a note somewhere that I needed it or I might want it than I would actually do that. So okay, so we do have the ability to get the roles coming down into the with the token now. We can always change that later. I believe that's correct, though. It looks right. So that now I'd have the ability to say on an endpoint, I can now say, right. So let's stop running that. So I suppose I could have a world where tenant administrator is a role but does not have the permission to create projects. Potentially. I don't know where that would come around, but it could potentially. Um, um, so this matters from the perspective of I need to be able to. I should define the permissions and roles that I want to go forward with. Um, this one obviously doesn't use the the name because again I'm torn on whether I want to do this at a global level. Right, so I have the policies. Do I want to do this at a global level or do I want to do this at a kind of per project level? What I was trying to do is set up something that I could kind of build these in each application stack, but because realistically the API is the only thing that's protecting it, so it would kind of be a piece here. Nothing beyond here uses those permissions, right? Because everything's guarded by the API. Anything that's in the back end that's doing things is allowed to do it implicitly because it's not, because it's directed in there by me or by the system, not by a user request. So what I was trying to figure out is there a clean way of kind of setting this up where I can say, okay, well, these are the permissions that this app cares about, and here's the roles that it cares about maybe now, without defining them globally. Identity is added because I have extensions and stuff in here to make things easier, but yeah. So let's branch this, new branch. Right now, this will be called missions. Create project. We'll talk about that afterwards. T63. So let's save that one. Close that one down. Let's go here. Let's move that into there. So this will be feature T63. Add create project. There's a few other challenges with this particular item as well, in that there's some uniqueness checks. So there's some validation required at the database level as well before I can go and say it's done. So the endpoint will return errors if it's duplicated. So there's some differences in how this is working. Okay, so where to really start? Permissions is a little bit too premature, right? I don't want to do that. I've identified that tenant management is the place where this is going to live, so that's good. So let's start with some tests concerning create project. When project prefix does let's start with what's the most challenging one here. Does not exist is the easiest one because I can actually just validate that I can add it in, right? So the assumption is it doesn't exist. When I add the rules for does exist, does not exist, this will, yeah, does not exist. Fact. Reject. Fact. What? What happened to my... No. What happened to my... template? What's it called? Settings. Please tell me that doesn't synchronize. I decided to try and test what the theme synchronization did yesterday. Yeah. Now I'm wondering if I've introduced a problem. What is it called? Editor. Language injections. File templates. No, it's not file templates, is it? What are these called? Live templates? There we go. My factor's gone. No name. Shortcut. Fact. Create a new X unit fact. Public. So it becomes fact. Bullet void. What's the way we do this? Settings. Okay. It's called fact. Create new X unit fact. This is going to be fact public void last name save. Ugh. Settings. Double surround it. Okay. When project prefix does not exist, project is created. Okay. So I don't want to create another fact. I want to do protected override arrange and act. So project is created. We're gonna do a test against the repository that we've added the project with the name and the prefix. Again, I actually did some. I think I did some simple code testing the other day of this. Yeah. So I was testing. Okay, given this, right? Kind of figure out. Okay, well, is there multiple strings? If there's not, take the first three characters up to the first three characters. Right. Right. Yeah, that one won't. Can I do name.83? Yeah, that'll work. So take the first characters and try and generate that. It will be configurable. And probably I put some more effort into the view to show other project prefixes to try and do dedupe eventually. But for right now, this needs to kind of just calculate it. So this one will come up MNP, this one will come up ST, this one will come up SIM, this one will be EF. So if it's got more than one word, it'll take the first three words and pull that, right? It'll take the first character from each and then two up of them and return those. So yeah, it'll do the right thing. So that's the basic generation. But I don't need to do that on the server side, right? I need to do that on the client side because the client is the one that's going to offer it and then dedupe it. So this just needs to validate that it doesn't exist. Which actually gets into a whole different world. Okay. So I don't want to do it this way because I think there's a better way of doing these. I think it'll be cleaner. Register user. Where are you? Is it tenant management or tickets? Tenants. Command. No. Command. Some of this code is going to be tough. So I talked about validation. Essentially what I want to do is I don't want to do this inside of the handler, right? The result should be it creates a project for certain. But do I want to do the dupe check inside of this handler? One option is to use kind of fluent validators, and I actually can put a pipeline in there where I can inject a validator beforehand. And if that has the database, then it can check to see if the prefix exists and returns a fluent validation error rather than the actual handler doing it. Which means that this handler just becomes create a new project. Because the validation has been done. This is literally just create a project. So the concept of the prefix existing, prefix. I'm flipping back and forth between my pronunciations. Is it right to validate in this handler, or do I want to actually do a fluent validation, in which case then this unit test is literally the project gets inserted. So I just gotta kind of contemplate what that means. And coding is important, right? I want to do more code, and it is something that I'm streaming development, but this is development, right? I've got to make these decisions, and if I stop and think about this long enough, at least I'll make sure that I'm confident with the decision. I can move forward with it. If I just jam it in there because it's what's fastest, I set a pattern for myself and for anyone else picking up the code base down the line. I have an option. The one thing I don't know about Fluent validation database. What is the right way to do a fluent validation with a DB check? So I don't see many of them. Predicate validator must has an overload which acts as predicate with two parameters, so it's that category. With message must unique name. So we can inject the context. No, we're not injecting anything there. That's a problem. Fluent validation, inject DB context. Okay, so I can set up the validator that way. Okay. I do have some examples. I've just got to figure out where they are. Planning items, maybe. I can't remember whether I put them into. Where did I do it? I didn't do it in planning. I didn't do it in tenant management. Sure. I would have done it in Teams. Oh, validator. There you go. There's a validator. So I do get I could inject it because it is set up in add scope validator. Yeah, so I do get a validator there. Although that's the actual post. I actually validate. So yeah, there you go. And mediator validation. So this will inject the mediator piece, right? So this will set up Fluent validation and add the validator for this command being sent. So it will actually inject that. It will insert that before the command. It will add a transient. So it does set up. Yeah. And mediator validation adds the pipeline behavior for the Fluent validation preprocessor. And all this does is checks to see if there's a validator. So this will only apply on messages that are validated. So the command here, the register user, the command is iValidate, right? So if I apply that, maybe I break these out as different files, then I do have some separation, but it does mean that the code, that this test is going to be very different, right? Because the prefix matters not here, right? I could test the validator, right? So I could say concerning create project validation, right? I could do it that way. That would kind of give me something there. So I mean, if you're watching this, you're wondering what the heck I'm doing, you have any questions, any thoughts or opinions, you're more than welcome to share. I am trying to build a system here, a platform that is going to take some considerable effort, right? And I do need to take my time with it. So I'm streaming it because it is helpful to see how software works, and I'm gonna You haven't seen my PHP. You haven't seen chaos until you've seen my PHP. Whoop. It's not a lot of spacing. So I do validation facets. So the arrange here would be interesting. So we need to, our subject would be our validator, right? So private create project validator is the subject. And let's do tenant management application use cases. This is not overly involved, so that is a straight up command. Projects, create project. Right, so our commands read like that. So create project is the thing. Now, one option I have here, and I think it's probably cleaner from a visibility perspective, is to do this way. And actually, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to create. I want to create a partial class, and this is going to be it's still going to be called create project validator. I'm just going to change it to be create project. So that's just so I group the actual behavior, and the validator would be in here. So public class validator, and this would require an I repository of project. And it would take an abstract validator of, so it would be public record command string name string prefix I request result I validate. Right, and this would be of a abstract validator of create project command. This is partial, it'll accept that. Nice. Okay. So that's primary constructor here is useless because I need to create a constructor public validator, and then we'll be able to define our rules. That works almost. So some hard-coded values here that would be nice to know. Constant maximum name length, and that would be factor into field, introduce constant maximum fixed length. It's 4. Just from a readability perspective, I'm just worried about that there. So what this would do is would validate the name up to maximum 50 characters. We get a rule which says the prefix can't be empty. Well, neither of them can be empty. The maximum length must be 4. It can be is up to 4, and then this must pass. And then with message project prefix already exists. Okay. What else? So I need to define the project. I'm trying not to rush ahead. I'm trying not to rush ahead of myself by adding in too much stuff, but it's hard not to kind of at least build it out a little bit, right? So we got the validator. We can do subject equals new validator. And this takes a mock, so we're going to need private I repository project repository. Golang versus Rust. Have you tested that yet? Do you have any opinions on that, Morby? Repository equals new, no, equals substitute. And ultimately what we're doing is subject dot validate, and that takes the command. Nice. So we don't need the act in this case because the act will be in here. So I don't like is true. I think that's mine, right? Yeah. Is extensions is not null, is false, is true, is within. Okay, so that gives us something to build with. We got so now the domain entity, so we need a project here. So a project is going to be an entity base. It's going to have bullet string name and a public string prefix. Entity base will carry with it ID, identifier, date added, last updated. Right. Now that will be valid. That will actually all be valid now. The only thing we need now is this project by prefix spec. So yeah, I do specifications. Project by, yeah. I just don't want to write specification time and time and time again, so that's why I'm avoiding that one. So this takes is a specification of type project. I single result specification of project as well, because we only want one back, and there's actually a difference between how it works. We take the constructor and we pass in string prefix, right? That should, when I include this, now make that compile. Okay, so it's all compiling. The query here doesn't actually matter, right? But it's worth figuring out. So where p goes to p dot prefix equals prefix. Case sensitivity. SQL Server by default is not case sensitive, I believe, so that will actually always work. I don't have to specify. That might be something I want to test later, but I can't test it with a unit test. I have to test that with an integration test, because it will always work, or always fail if I set it up incorrectly. Right. If I actually do case difference here, it will fail, but it will fail in a non-genuine way. What else? So essentially, that should pass. Might not do, but it might. Oh, we failed. Why did we fail? Validator contains asynchronous rules but was invoked synchronously. Oh, that's an interesting challenge. Huh. So that's going to be something to test. Will the project? So we set up the validators here. There's no concept of setting up asynchronous validation. When we add the fluent validation, we set the pipeline behavior, validate and throw async. So it does already do it asynchronously. So it should be okay. And that's a throw, not a just a return. So yeah, okay. When project prefix does exist, right? The fact here is validation fails, right? It's essentially the same test, right? I want to set up the pieces there. I want to set up the pieces here. This should be a range act. And I want to validate, well, I want to make the same call, but I want to say here, repository dot when r goes to r dot I don't know, arg dot is that I can't test because I can't test the constructor of that object. Arg any cancellation token returns new project. Cannot resolve. Oh, so I have to say. Sorry, I have to say any there. Got any? Can I convert to type? Oh, when r dot there you go. Okay, so that's asking for the single default of that. When right, that's correct. Oh no. Do this wrong. Single default returns. The when is kind of capturing when something happens. When this thing happens, do this thing, right? So that doesn't return anything. Here I'm kind of intercepting that method and saying, okay, when you get this method called with any of these arguments, right? And because of the way the specs work, I can't just match them. I do need to dig deeper into that because it does leave a hole in that if I pass an invalid spec, I could potentially get the same thing. But all I'm saying right now is because I'm controlling the size, I'm saying, okay, well, name equals project name, prefix equals project prefix, right? Private read-only string project name equals project name, private read-only string prefix project prefix equals that. So I'm expecting actually that doesn't new project name, right? I wanna say I'm passing the same thing in. This should fail. Actual false. So it actually did is false, right? So it did fail correctly. So minor things, minor steps forward, and a lot of talking for very little actual code. I appreciate that, but this is what's necessary to make sure that I'm not going to make a mess of this thing, right? I've validated, okay, I do want the tenant management in here. I do want the code to look like this. The validation does, in theory, work. We'll add that in, obviously, as we get to integration components in the next steps. So, yeah, it's sorry, just looking something up. It's slow moving, but it does move further forward. And again, I do get towards right this ability to produce this information. So the next step will be to get this to save the actual project and then publish a Kafka component. And again, this is where the story planning becomes challenging because obviously, where should this stop, right? When I say create an API, where should this stop, right? I have no need to consume. So realistically, this story starts to expand. And you could argue I'm overcomplicating it. You could argue that it's a lot. Like, I could just implicitly do a lot of this stuff. But the problem with doing that is, and that's why I'm building this system, is there's so many lost things to little pieces everywhere. Right. And if I was to use the actual system right now to create this, right, then I would define a planning item of being, if I define a planning item of, say, I should be able to create a project, and then I listed my requirements. So I should see this, I should see that, I should see this, I should see that, I should see this. The idea there is that this will prompt the developers to at least think about, what are you actually doing there? Because if I should see the project as a drop down, right, or I should see the project as a attached as a label on a planning item, or when I create a planning item, I should now be able to assign a project to the planning item, right? All these things require data to be moved around, right? Just adding the planning item is just step one. Actually seeing it in other components, getting the data down, they're all individual pieces that, right? If you treat them as one big piece of work, which essentially I will be doing, but I'll just be rolling through into the pieces. But it's there's a potential for lost effort in there. So the analysis isn't necessary, and the discussion is necessary. So having the ability to put those requirements in there is, okay, well, I need to see it here, I need to do it there, and be able to say, okay, well, that they're one story, that they're another story, and take that planning item and really build it out as an actual set of stories. A planning item might align one-to-one with a story, but it might align one-to-many with a story as well, once the analysis has been done. And, over time, maybe the product management gets used to a planning item being one-to-one with the story, but it's not always guaranteed. And the idea is to help them think and kind of design what they actually want, in a way that they can kind of use it for discussion without actually creating stories and filling up a backlog. So it is important. It's a necessary evil to do this sort of stuff, but the system will be stronger for it. So I'm going to keep doing this. So I'm going to see if I can get some of this done off stream as well today. I don't have much spare time, so it's not always possible. But if not, I will be back again tomorrow. We'll pick it up from wherever I land. And the goal will be to very much get the projects component in and start to build out this feature set. And from there, from projects, we go to what I determined yesterday. For projects, we've got like the drop downs again for filtering, so it can then filter the planning items down to a project. There's some search. Being able to do search and stuff is something that is going to be coming shortly after that. And again, the idea of the projects will allow the system to grow. But there's again permissions and things that I need to consider there. So yeah, once we get to there, we can search on planning items. We can bring them up, do a basic version basically from the start, but planning items will get more involved bit by bit. And yeah, that'll be it. So I am going to continue trying to build out extra stories here. This is going to start to grow now. Now that I've actually got some momentum with the design goals, it does allow me to kind of think through these things. So that will be it for today for me. I will be back tomorrow. It looks like I lost most people anyway with my waffling, so I'm going to just finish up the stream here today. I'm not going to raid out. No worries, One Lane. Thank you very much for hanging out. I appreciate it. Actually, I brought up the chat window before the stream and saw your name in there right from the beginning. So I do appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm going to go get some breakfast quickly. So I'm just going to finish up here, and I will return tomorrow and hopefully have some more progress made. And yeah, thank you for joining me. Take care. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you again soon. Bye all.